Welcome everyone to the third part of why and how we construct details in architecture. Today I want to talk through the process of how constructing details within an architecture office sort of happens. Because I've mentioned it before, it's not just that we sit down, we draw the detail and it's done, but it's a very iterative and it's a very experimental process sometimes as well. In the first video, I've shared a couple of tips and tricks on how to get started with finding references, or built examples. So that's always a really good source of inspiration, but also having a baseline, something to work with, so you don't have to start with a white piece of paper and come up with a detail all by yourself. So even though that details, and I explained that in part 2, so have a look at that video as well if you're interested, of how details are quite customized. Every time each project has its quite unique specifications and requirements, and therefore the details have to adjust to all these specifications. So even though that we have these customized, unique solutions, we do not have to reinvent the wheel every single time when we are detailing and constructing our buildings. But nonetheless, it is really important to start with a research phase and a sketching phase. I think there's nothing beats a simple piece of paper and a pen and sort of roughly sketching out what you are about to be constructing and hopefully drawing in a more precise way in your CAD drawings. Because I think I've talked about this in some of my CAD videos as well. It's really easy to kind of get lost in the details, literally get lost in that like zooming in modes of digital or of software in general, and then kind of lose a little bit the sight of the whole thing. So sketching is super, super important. I do this every single time. That's how I start. That's how I think as well. It's not about being a good drawer. It's more about finding that process that helps you to lead you through your thinking processes as well. And once I have a basic idea of how the detail might look like, I start to draft this particular detail in a CAD drawing. So that allows me to see whether the dimensioning and all of that actually works out, because it's a really difficult process translating a sketch into a CAD drawing. It always seems so linear and so easy, but once you start it, you realize, oh, there's actually many more things that I still need to solve. So you can start that iterative process. Once you have a first draft, print it out, sketch on top of it again, switch to a digital workflow, fix those initial mistakes that you might have had and go back and forth. I think it really helps to really resolve some of the questions that you might have in that construction process. And what is also really important is not just switching these workflows, but also switching between scales. And I've mentioned that in the last video as well. What works in a 1:5 detail needs to be working in a bigger scale as well, in your ground plan, in your 1:100 scale drawings, and in that kind of cohesive and connected construction principle that you have established for yourself. So detailing is very much about how things are coming together. How are they attached to each other? How are they assembled? Which layer comes at what point? And you have to be really careful to not just solve them in a 2-dimensional construction detail within a CAD plan. You really, really have to think about how are people manufacturing and assembling your details. And that means, okay, which element is coming first? How do I attach the second one? How are certain things slot into it? And all these that kind of thinking process really requires you to either have a lot of experience or a lot of empathy and anticipation of how things are being constructed, but sometimes it also means that you have to test your details as well. And this is where model making comes in really, really handy as well. So understanding that what you are showing in 2 dimensions with lines and hatchings and areas in a plan, in reality is a 3-dimensional elements with a width and a thickness and a heaviness that need to be put together in a certain way. So, and and it's not just 3 dimension, it's actually the 4th dimension as well. It's also time. It's the way how things are coming together. And this is really important to understand, and will actually make or break a good detail at the end of the day. So luckily, you do not have to do all of this by yourself. But once you have a cohesive draft of all your details, not just one, but multiple, you will eventually discuss those details with specialists or engineers. They are the ones that have specific knowledge about their particular area within the building. So it could be civil engineers that know about the load bearing. It could be a building scientists that know about the requirements of your insulation, of your waterproofing membranes, and all these sort of things. So together with them, you will coordinate all these different requirements. These are requirements from your building code, from fire safety, other kinds of safety and measurements, such as, again, water management, which is always a very important thing. So they will input in your detail process. And bear in mind, they each have their quite specific competencies and their very specific focus. So they will obviously prioritize their own craft, their own topic or expertise. And you as an architect need to negotiate and facilitate between all these different requirements and specifications. So you are the one, again, putting together all these different crafts and making sure that things work in unison together. So this is really, again, it's a very iterative process. It requires a lot of work and a lot of thinking. So once you have these initial feedbacks from the experts, you can then go in and revise all your details, and hopefully you can fix some of those initial mistakes or things that haven't worked that well. And then eventually, as a third step, you, at some point in your building phase, you will have the specific manufacturers. So your engineers and specialists, they are the ones planning and helping you to plan the buildings. But then the manufacturers, they are the ones that will actually build your building on the site. So they themselves will have feedback for your details as well. They will have very specific products or elements or materials or practices and how they are used to work and how they assemble things on a site, and they will feedback all of that. So again, you might have to do another round of revisions and adjustments to your details just to ensure that they can actually physically build what you are planning in your 2D plans and drawings and everything. So you have to adjust for that feasibility and adjust to the actual specific products because they might differ. And then hopefully once you've done that second big round of revisions, you will have a very cohesive set of details that are actually feasible and they work and you can build with them. And hopefully your building will be constructed in that way. And what you will also notice is that you have to compromise sometimes on a building site as well. So all of a sudden there will be unexpected problems that will come up. All of a sudden it might be a slightly different product that has been used than what you anticipated, and we have to react to these sort of things. So sometimes we have to problem solve on the site, and we have to find a solution on how we can construct the buildings safely and appropriately. And that means at the end of the day, once your building is finished, you probably have to revise your details one last time and actually implement all those last minute changes that have happened, so that we can ensure that we have a complete set of plans for archiving or documentation purposes that we can keep in-house or we can give to our clients, that fully shows all the planning documentation of how the building has actually been constructed in real life. And I think this is really important to make that last effort, that last push of making sure that the details are all up to date, because this is where the learning process is happening for not just you, but all your colleagues in the office as well, and as a future reference for yourself, of course, if you want to go back to having a look at the documentation and understand how things have been done in that specific project. So hopefully you can build up your own, not just your own experience, but your own detail library through all of that as well. So hopefully this has given you a bit of an overview of how that process in a real life situation in an architectural office will be managed. It's not just you by yourself, even though as a student, of course, it's mostly you do all the work yourself and you have to research everything. At some point, there will be specialists and people with a lot of experience that you can that help you and that you can ask for specific questions and all of that. Yeah, I hope that was helpful. Let me know if there's any further questions from your side. Thank you.